Hey guys, it's Rachel, and I'm going to be talking about the tumor that was in my brain, on my brainstem, and some of the initial aspects of that, like how we found it, what my reaction was, and how I took advantage of it in every possible way I could. First things first, the tumor that I had was called a trigeminal schwannoma, which is, the schwannoma is a type of benign tumor, and the trigeminal part comes from the fact that it's resting on the trigeminal nerve, and I believe it's in like the myelin sheath, so it's not like in the meat of the nerve, it's not in the meat of the brainstem, and it's not in the meat of the brain, and because it's kind of like in between the lobes, it's not technically a brain tumor. So let's be clear about that. Technically speaking, it wasn't a brain tumor, it was just a tumor that happened to be in my brain. Just to get the technicalities out of the way. A lot of people who have a trigeminal schwannoma only find it when it starts impacting their lives. For me, I had the privilege of that not being the case. What happened was, I was in high school, and sometimes they have like hearing tests and vision tests and random tests for students to make sure that their bodies and brains are all functioning normally. We found out that I had hearing loss in my left ear. What? And so they suggested if we had the means to do so, I should get an MRI just to make sure that I didn't have an acoustic neuroma or a tumor that was like blocking my ear canal or messing that up in some sort of way. So I go and I have my MRI, and I find that not only do I have randomly a cyst in my pituitary gland, but I also have a benign tumor that is still growing. Benign doesn't mean it doesn't grow, it just means it's not cancerous. So I have a benign tumor on my brainstem. When we were called into the doctor's office to have this information revealed, and I say we because it was me and my parents kind of looked at me and were kind of gauging my reaction just to see, you know, how they could console me whenever I started crying or whatever. But at this stage in my life, I think this was when I was taking my first psychology class, and I'm like really fascinated with how the brain works. So my reaction was less like, oh, this is a very real thing that I'm gonna have to deal with, and it was more like, whoa, that's f***ing cool, man. That's neat. What does that mean? How can I learn more about that? Unfortunately, as I said earlier, there's not a whole lot of research on it. It's like a really rare condition in the sense that my neurosurgeon, my brain surgeon, said that he'd only seen like 10 cases in his life. So that's kind of scary. But rare doesn't necessarily mean more dangerous. Like I said earlier, it wasn't cancer, so I felt kind of thankful about that. I also felt almost like religious in the sense that there was really no reason for us to have found that. I was privileged enough to have been able to get an MRI. I was privileged enough to be able to be set up with a neurosurgeon right away to talk through it, and I was privileged enough to have found it in the first place. Because if it weren't for the fact that my school tested my hearing, and if it weren't for the fact that I had bad hearing in my left ear, I might still not ever know about it. I might be experiencing symptoms and not have any clue where to go from there. So the most common symptoms that occur as a result of a growing trigeminal schwannoma on the brainstem is it starts to cut off nerve responses to the face. So I'm sure many of you know that the left part of the brain controls more of the right part of the body, and the right part of the brain controls the left part of the body. What? Unnecessarily confusing, whatever. But my tumor was before this switch happened. So my tumor was on the left side of my brainstem, so it would be impacting the left side of my face. The symptoms that I was told to look out for would be facial numbness, facial pain, or facial paralysis in one or more of these three areas. So it would be like the mouth and the jaw, the nose and the cheek, and like the forehead. And I don't remember where the eye falls. So I never ended up having any of those symptoms until after I had my surgery, and that was kind of as a result of the surgery. I'll get into that more in future videos, but just to get that out there, I never ended up experiencing those symptoms right away. Another symptom that I was told to look out for is double vision. So double vision is essentially when you see two of whatever you're supposed to be seeing in front of you, and that image would be like overlapping a little bit. So I find out that I have this tumor on my brainstem my junior year of high school, and I was pretty open about it. I don't think I ever ended up crying until it was about time for my surgery. I think that's the only time I really felt weird about it. But I was pretty open with people about it, partly because I thought it was neat and a fun little fact about me, teehee. But also partly because, like I said earlier, I wanted to take advantage of that shit. Like, you tell people you have a brain tumor, which I did, even though it's not technically true, I might as well, right? They'll have a lot of sympathy for you. It was maybe a week or two after I find out about this, I'm in geometry class. And this is a class that I actually enjoy. I never minded doing homework or anything, but the teacher assigns us a homework assignment, and there were a lot of people in my class who are like, can we please just not have a homework assignment? I got a lot of other assignments in this class. I'm studying for this test. You know, this is about the time where you start taking SATs and AP stuff. My teacher was just like, no, like, you know, give me your sob stories and stuff. And I lean over to one of my friends who already knew about my tumor. And I was like, I could tell her that I have a brain tumor. And we both laughed, and then we were both like, unless. So I did it. I ended up raising my hand and being like, you said give us your sob stories, so I found out that I have a brain tumor. And it just got really quiet in the room. And my teacher's just like, I'm so sorry. You're so brave. You're so courageous. I don't know how you're maintaining this positive demeanor. And I was like, so can we get out of homework? And she said yes. So I got the class out of homework. That's when I realized I was a real fighter for the proletariat, right? I remember there was this one time where my older sister wanted to attend some sort of family function, but she had committed to something else beforehand. And so what she did was she said, I'm so sorry, I just found out that my sister had a brain tumor. And of course this person was like super understanding and was like, yeah, don't worry about like skipping out on this commitment and stuff. But like this was a year or two after we found out about the brain tumor. It's just, you know, it's a good way to get out of things. So if you ever find out that you have any sort of medical ailment, take advantage of that shit. You might as well. You gotta deal with it. Even if you're not feeling any symptoms or not even in like a bad mood about it, take advantage of that shit, man. The system's already working against you. You might as well work against it right back. I also did a lot of things to try and like ease people's perception of it because, like I said earlier, I was pretty lighthearted about it. I don't expect anybody else with this condition to be lighthearted about it. This is just my experience. But I decided to name my tumor, and I thought it would be really funny if I named my tumor You, like Y-O-U, so I can go up to people and be like, I can't get you out of my head. And I think that was a good way to kind of let people know how I felt about the entire situation. Because when you tell people you have a brain tumor, or even you have a tumor in your brain and specify that it's not technically a brain tumor, it's people can get very, I don't want to say dramatic about it because it is kind of a big deal, but I don't know. I just didn't want people, I didn't want that to become my new identity, in the sense of people looking at me like, this is a person with the brain tumor, it's so sad. And I'm just like moping around all the time. Like I said earlier, like I thought it was just like a fun fact. A fun little factoid about me. So I would visit my neurosurgeon periodically. When we first found out about it, we decided to do another MRI a year later just to kind of gauge how fast it was growing. And then we did it every other year when we found out it wasn't growing very fast at all. We would meet sometimes so I could ask questions whenever I thought of them. I had the neurosurgeon's receptionist in my email, and I would email her. God, she was such an angel. Bless you, Sherry. But it was mostly just a matter of monitoring it and me deciding if and when I wanted to have it removed, because it was growing. It was growing really slowly. By the time we found it, my neurosurgeon was baffled that I wasn't already showing symptoms. So I kind of knew that I would eventually need to get it removed. And it was posed to me in, I think, a pretty solid way that was easy for me to kind of understand what was going on. So I had the option of getting it removed sooner rather than later. And there were some benefits here, such as, you know, not having to worry about it in the future. When you're younger and you're recovering, you have a higher rate of recovery, things like that. But if I wait, the longer I'm able to wait, the better technology can get so that the actual surgery may be more successful. So there's definitely like pros and cons to both of them, waiting and getting it removed. It was one of those things where if I did start to show symptoms, it would kind of just be at the point where I'd need to have that surgery anyway. But I had the option to get the surgery before I started showing symptoms, which is ultimately what I decided to do. But I'll talk more about that decision process in another video. Finding out that you have some severe-ish medical condition really helps put life in a perspective that maybe you didn't have before. So, for example, I wanted to do a fundraiser the year before I found out, and this fundraiser was like, hey, you tell people that you will shave your head if you raise X amount of money, and then if you make that money, you shave your head. So I wanted to participate in that, but my boyfriend at the time, kind of a dirtbag, that's another story. He was very adamant that I did not participate in that fundraiser. The next year, I found out I had a brain tumor, and I was like, fuck it. Like, I don't really care what anybody's perception is. I'm just gonna do this thing because I want to, because like, life is precious and life is limited, and I need to live for me and not any of those motherfuckers, right? So I did this fundraiser, and that was really cool. Made a lot of really weird connections. There were a lot of people who reached out to me who appreciated the act of kindness that I did, because this fundraiser was for a children's hospital in my area. So I made some connections through that, and that was almost a good way for me to build community, in the sense of I wanted to do something for the kids who are dealing with medical issues before I knew I had a medical issue of my own. And then I find out I have this medical issue, and then I do the fundraiser, and then people reach out to me with their stories of their medical issues because I did the thing to help out the children with the medical issues. So I think using your medical issues not only as a way to like the system that fucks you, right, but also as a way to encourage you to live your life more authentically and more fully than maybe you would have if you weren't forced to conceptualize your life as being as fragile as it is. If I had to give any advice for people who have just found out they have a trigeminal schwannoma or any other kind of major or rare medical condition, the advice I would give would be take advantage of the sympathy you're going to get, especially if the sympathy is from a system. If you tell your boss you have a trigeminal schwannoma, take as many days off. Be like, I might be experiencing symptoms, or man, I'm feeling really depressed about my tumor today. You might be able to get some time off. Get creative with your grieving and coping process. So for me, whether or not it's healthy, I use humor as a coping mechanism, and that's kind of why I decided to name my tumor. It's goofy, and it kind of helped me view the entire situation through a different lens. For you, it might be different. Maybe you need to grieve, and it's totally normal and acceptable, reasonable, valid to cry or to get angry. If you want to smash things, go to one of those places where you get plates and just smash them against the wall. Do what you need to do. Listen to everybody's thoughts on actions they think you should take or they would take if they were in your shoes. Weigh the pros and cons with a clear mind and do it overnight. Don't just make a decision instantly. Take your time on this if you have time to take. And then decide for yourself what you feel like you should do regardless of what anybody else says. And live your life as authentically as you can, and use this situation as a way to encourage you to do so. If you're able to view your situation in a perspective that allows you to do that. I also encourage you to make community when and where you can. It would be hard for you to find somebody else with a trigeminal schwannoma in your city, in your town, in your state, maybe even in the country. But I do know that they have various support systems for people who have brain tumors in general, or maybe you can find community in Reddit for people who have various rare conditions, and you guys can complain about how stupid it is that there's not enough research for you guys to make a clear decision, or as clear of a decision as you would like. So that's all I have for this video. I will do another video on how I made my decision to have my surgery despite not having any symptoms, and how I prepared for my surgery leading up to it. And then I'll probably do another video about what the recovery process was for my surgery. And I don't know if this will be the same video or another video, but it's been about 3.5 years since I've had my craniotomy, so I want to do another video on things that I wasn't expecting to happen this far down the road, and what like long-term experiences I'm having. For everybody, these experiences are going to be different, so I don't want anybody to watch this video and say, oh, that's exactly what's going to happen to me, because that's not the case. But hopefully this will help prepare you in some capacity for whatever it is you're going through. I hope this helps, and I hope you're able to have a good day.